everybody. That's the most I've had to hammer the gavel. Good evening, everyone. So this will start our formal meeting. Let's start with a Pledge of Allegiance, please. The flag's behind you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I'll do a roll call. I'll do it visually. So I see Molly, George, Lee, Paloma, Ren, Dan. So I see 6 of us. Justice is not feeling well and excused. I see the city administrator, Chris White. Is there someone from the city attorney online?
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Nicholas Ward-Willis present.
Thank you, Nick. Nice to see you. So our first item of business is a community segment, and it will be honoring Beacon High School and Max Born Gymnasium Foreign Exchange Student Program participants, and I'll ask Kelly Ellenwood to start us up. I have a proclamation for you whenever you're ready. All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just here basically to introduce a couple of extraordinary teachers from the Max Born Gymnasium. But just a quick overview. I know I'm sort of preaching to the choir here because most of you here are part of the exchange program. But a few years ago, before COVID, I was approached by Thomas Schneck of DocuWare. At that time, they were considering moving to Beacon, their company, which originated in the small town of Gammering, or city, it's a city, just west of Munich. It's a company that had been around since 1988, and he and his founding partner met at this gymnasium, Max Born Gymnasium, and they wanted to connect our two cities because they were moving their company's North American headquarters to Beacon. And they thought that would be a really great thing to get the two high schools together and start a kind of a sister city situation. And COVID intervened, but we were able to get the program up and running last year. We sent 15 of our own students to Gammering last June and July, and we are able to repeat the program this year with a fresh new group of delegates. I like to call them delegates from Gammering, and then our Beacon High School delegates as well. So we have 16 students from the Max Born Gymnasium here this evening, along with their host siblings, that's what I like to say, and their families. So I am so grateful that we were able to do this. It's just so important that we expand our geopolitical outlook, maybe learn a few new words in a new language, and to just create understanding. The program is sponsored by the German-American Partnership Program, which is also overseen by the United States Department of State, and also the counterpart in Germany. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Sebastian Hess, who is one of the teachers from the Max Born Gymnasium.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Kelly, for introducing me. I hope my English is not too bad, sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, much better. Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you to the City of Beacon. Thank you to Beacon High School. Thank you to the parents involved, everyone involved in the program. And special thanks, Kelly, to you. Without you, the program would not be the way it is right now. We really appreciate everything you do for us, you did for us, and you will do for us, probably. We are so proud to be part of that program, which we hope will be a long-lasting tradition between our two communities. We feel the spirit right now that it's, about to be something very special that connects not only the kids, but also us as faculty members at Max Born and the faculty members here within the English department. We've met so far here at Beacon High School, and we are very, very grateful to be part of that, whole story we write together. Thank you very much for supporting us. Thank you. And I'm not here alone, of course. I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Angelica Sana, who is not super keen on talking, are you? Come on, just stand up, come on, get your applause, come on. Get your applause. but I think we said it all pretty much, so thank you very much again. Okay.
Okay. So I have a proclamation to read and then provide, and then I would suggest there must be some opportunity for a photo. So let me read it. Proclamation in honor of foreign exchange students from Beacon High School and Max Born Gymnasium. Whereas the students from Beacon High School and Max Born Gymnasium in Germering, Germany are participating in a joint foreign exchange student program which will take place in October of 2023 and June of 2024. And whereas 16 students and 2 teachers are visiting from Max Born beginning on October 21st, 2023. Is that today? It started already. They arrived on Saturday. Great. And whereas 16 Beacon families have volunteered to host these visiting students and teachers for 2 weeks that they are spending here in Beacon. And whereas the parent-teacher-student organization of Beacon High School has coordinated experiences for participating students which help to demonstrate what makes the Hudson Valley and Bavaria such special places. And whereas travel is one of the very best forms of education and is an important way to gain world perspective beyond that which we can offer in our own communities. Now, therefore, as mayor, I do issue this proclamation in honor of these students while wishing each of them a wonderful and transformative experience these next few weeks as they make an important connection between our 2 cities and countries during a time of global geopolitical uncertainty. So it's signed Lee Kyriakou, Mayor, on today's date. So thank you. I just want to add that I had the opportunity to travel overseas for the first time when I was in college, and I spent a year in Britain at a place called the University of Sussex, and it truly was transformative. It was college for me, but it was also a time where I learned I could do serious academics. It encouraged me to go to graduate school, which I did, and it helped me see a lot of the world, which I could otherwise not have afforded to do. So I hope you have a great experience. I also, as I've mentioned to our German visitors, that I have an important connection to the Munich area related to my personal life, which I won't tell you the story, but it is a fun one. And then I have these proclamations. What should I do with them, Kelly? All right. And then how will we do a photo opportunity? So what I would encourage, and let's see if I got this right, Chris, should we bring them all up and then we all stand and we do a photo that way?
Yeah, or come in front of the table, because last year you all got lost.
Okay, so we're going to come in front of the table. We're going to ask you to come up here and stand, and we're going to look the other way, and Kelly or someone will take a photo. All right?
Great. And I also want to mention, and by the way, thank you so much for having us here tonight, that our city councilman, Dan Amar Blair of Ward 4, is one of the host parents. I think Lynn Ramsvik, yes, you're living with the Amar Blairs. And I just wanted to...
One city employee.
Oh, that's right, and Mr. Peter Skorowitz, who's doing the videos, the man behind the curtain back there, is also a host parent with Katrina. Yeah, indeed. Oh, who else? Oh, who else? Oh, of course. Oh, my goodness gracious. I am the worst. Okay, very good. All right, so let's take a picture.
All right.
Just set you up some obstacles here. I'll just stand on the chair.
You have a year-old.
1 year old.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, he's quite a handful.
Yeah, that's nice. That's great. I'm so glad you're here. You know,
too,
because
me
we were
too.
we were like, oh, we were not going to see it last year, and then Monica was like, oh, Sebastian's coming, and I was like, oh, really? All right.
I took, everything I could to make my
So different here.
prepare for that situation. My parents are there.
Are you able to go to any of the government classes?
Without them.
You have family in there?
Sure.
Oh, that's a big deal.
Yeah, it is.
We don't have family in here. So
It is super helpful.
Yeah.
Without them, sometimes. Not always, but there are certain nights and days.
Yes, Lee and I will be in the seniors government class on Friday.
But
well, I'll tell you
If you're-
one thing I
if
can
you're allowed
offer
to
is
do that.
it gets easier.
yeah,
Every year it gets easier. Okay. Yeah.
listen to your words,
Hey,
okay?
man, I really appreciate you wearing the Bavarian.
Yeah, it's totally talking about.
Thank you so much.
All right, take it easy.
With the senior class. Yeah. Maybe we'll see you Friday. About to figure it out. Amazing, right?
So yeah, this guy Sebastian, he didn't come last year because his wife just was about to have a baby. So that we met him, but then we were like,
Oh, they're not staying for the whole meeting?
yeah, kids, make sure you stick around for local law number 5 concerning zoning code corrections.
House cleaning.
House cleaning. All right, let's give them a minute to clear the room.
That's pretty cool.
It is. It is really cool.
Now, is your German? Are you like able to communicate yet, or?
Yeah, I forgot. I'm A B2. I have to work towards B2 for residency.
Did you pick the car up?
Even
at Dr.
having,
K's?
even marrying a German. Really?
So he says, well, he hasn't picked up his car yet, so he must be.
She had to take this long interview to prove that she was still
Well,
German.
I bring my
She could
truck in
prove
there,
how
but
many meals,
my
German
girlfriend,
meals
she was
how
bringing
many-
her.
how many hours she
Mini
spoke
Cooper.
German language and whether she
Oh
was
my
German. She got grilled by
Introduced
the
them.
German embassy. Or consulate.
All right. Hey, everybody, whoever's left. So the next item of business is public comments. And we have 2 public hearings, so be aware that if you'd like to speak regarding the public hearings, you should withhold your remarks for that. And the 2 public hearings, one concerns zoning code corrections, ever important, with some details. And the second one concerns community development block grants for Dutchess County. So if you have comments on those, just please hold up. Otherwise, you're welcome to come up. I have some people who have signed up. Remember, your limit is to 3 minutes on any topic. Do try to be nice, but otherwise, go for it. Daniel Aubrey, 15 Water Street.
Well, I lost my audience, but what the hell?
Yeah.
Mary Kiriakou, City Council, City Administrator Chris White. Over a year ago, the Beacon City Council amended the building code to allow for the possibility of building an additional detached or freestanding residential structure on a single-family property known as an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. According to Beacon's new building inspector, there have been very few inquiries or applications for building permits for these kind of structures, which I think is unfortunate because Beacon, due to its very small size, we're only 4.9 square miles, needs the added housing density to keep real estate taxes from climbing ever higher. It also needs additional rental units to keep rents from escalating further. I believe that the failure to get traction on the ADU program is due to the simple fact that the public is not aware that it's a possibility or what it entails. Governor Hochul has signed into law a program, Plus One ADU, which allows homeowners to get grants of up to $125,000 towards building a new ADU or adapting an existing structure, such as a garage, to residential use. By the way, that's a grant, not a loan. It doesn't have to be repaid. The catch, and there always seems to be one, is that the homeowner cannot apply to the state directly for the grant. The grants have to be administered by a government entity, such as a municipality. The Plus One ADU program is income restricted to benefit those who need it most. Lower income families who are having a hard time making their mortgage payments and paying ever higher taxes, or those who need to house an aging relative because they can't afford to put them into a nursing home. ADUs are a great spur to intergenerational family living. The good news is that to date, only 14 municipalities out of nearly 1,000 statewide have joined the program. Have joined the program, which means that there are relatively few claimants for the $80 million which has been set aside for ADU grants. I encourage the City of Beacon to immediately attempt to join the Plus One ADU program.
15 seconds.
With the end of the year approaching and budget issues and rezoning taking your attention, I suggest the creation of an ad hoc committee to investigate the application process. I'm prepared to serve on the committee, and so are several people I've contacted. We hope you will look favorably on this initiative, which we believe is win-win for the City of Beacon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thomas Wright, Grove Street.
Good evening. Thomas Wright, 24 Grove Street. I'm the chair of the Greenway Committee and a member of the Conservation Advisory Committee. I'm speaking this evening on FA zoning, but first, thank you to Random Paloma for hosting the community event yesterday on this very important topic. There was a lot of people there and a high level of engagement. My key takeaway is that successful FA zoning requires a comprehensive plan-like review by the community. This review would involve expert-led master planning and visioning sessions, which utilize visual presentation materials to help participants understand what the zoning language will look like in built form. This will allow the community to productively apply their engagement to making the FA zoning as good as it possibly can be. Perhaps this process comes in the form of starting the comprehensive plan procedures as soon as possible. Perhaps it is a process that is styled on the comprehensive plan, but focuses only on the FA zoning. The process will take time, and it should take time. A key challenge for the council will be to figure out a way to implement a building moratorium or some other pausing mechanism that would allow for the time and space required by a more public, comprehensive process. One of the key topics in yesterday's community discussion was bike lanes on Fishkill Avenue. Bike lanes absolutely need to be incorporated into FA zoning. I have studied the dimensions of the roadway within the FA zone and the lane width requirements for cars, trucks, and bicycles. Roadway width is at least 33 feet throughout the entire FA zone. 33 feet is enough for two 11-foot wide truck-friendly lanes and a 2-lane cycle track protected by a 3-foot buffer. This can be achieved with paint. At a minimum, this roadway scheme should be incorporated into the planning for the FA zone. But don't take my word for it. I respectfully request that the City of Beacon initiate a feasibility study for bike lanes in the FA zone. Ideally, such a study would gauge feasibility of not just minimum bike lane infrastructure, but maximum. Ideally, the zoning would incorporate adequate space for separated bike lanes with buffer in both directions. And here lies the intersection between design concept and zoning. Roadway width can be achieved by setting minimum front yard setbacks at a distance from the center line of the roadway that would allow for bike lanes on both sides of the roadway. In other words, instead of merely stating a 10-foot front yard setback, 10-foot front yard setback from property line from buildings, the zoning language would establish a minimum setback required for the City of Beacon to achieve the roadway, the buffer, and bike lanes, and the sidewalk. There is a precedent for this approach of building a community good into the zoning, and that is our Greenway Trail.
15 seconds.
The Fishkill Creek District zoning states that property developers must provide a 20-foot wide easement for a publicly accessible trail. Thank you.
Thank you. Teresa Kraft, on file. You live on file.
Yeah, I always write
I
that.
know.
I just noticed. Good evening. I think anybody listening to last week's workshop talking about increasing the stipend for the council members could have found it to be a scripted conversation. It was way more than a cost of living increase. I also found it interesting that some pie-in-the-sky ideas are talked about at length, putting so much time and energy into conversations when some real issues are rushed over. Will the length of the terms be extended? Is that where this is going? You'd think the council reports would be chock full of daily life concerns. It's not just an opportunity to shout out ward office hours or the lack of them. It's extremely important that we have a new comprehensive plan, a real public forum, with a plan to curb more overdevelopment. We must protect what is left of our historic Main Street, the Fishkill Creek, and historic view sheds. For months, the town of Fishkill has been reviewing the proposed storage facility on Route 9D on the outskirts of Beacon. They are concerned with the quality of life and the safety of Beacon residents, openly discussing us in their meeting conversations, and want to know if we're talking about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Pavlik.
I'm here tonight to express my opinion of this council's potentially asking for a raise. I believe there's a lot of unfinished business and undecided information that affects a lot of people in Beacon regarding this raise. Like, for instance, how the new volunteer firefighters fit into the new firehouse. That has not been decided. And this council has a figuring on that some way, shape, or form, how that had to happen. They don't know yet how the new volunteers are going to fit in to the new firehouse. I think that's a reckless disregard to them. They don't know how they're going to be a part of the firehouse yet. That's one number unfinished business concerning unfinished business. This potential raise also factors in that you represent constituents. You're not here for yourself, you represent people. So I believe it should have to go out for a referendum on this and let it be decided. Whatever the referendum says, then I'll back the referendum as well. But I don't think there should be a vote on this matter, voting your money. And don't get me wrong, you know, a raise is a raise, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you don't deserve it or you do deserve it. I'm just saying that there's factors that need to be included in this, you know, point of raise money, that much of you know, money. So that's my comments, and I just wanted to throw another comment out there. If and when you do get this money, would the next thing be you want to change the council's years from 2 years to 4 years? I got interviewed by this years ago from one of the committees, and I said, no, keep the council at 2 years because they would have interaction with the people every 2 years instead of 4 years. You wouldn't, you know, not that they wouldn't see us, but it would be a long time before they saw someone coming knocking on their door, so that's my comments. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the physical public out there, meaning in the pews, that wants to speak? And if so, this is a great time to do it. Come tell us your name and where you live.
Hi, Stu Weatherby, 66 Mead Avenue. I want to start by saying we had a healthy discussion at TRAX yesterday about the Fishkill Avenue district. A lot of people showed up. Brendan Paloma did a great job heading up the meeting. Thank you. It was nice talking and getting to know people in a casual setting. Although Ren and Paloma were very attentive to the many concerns that people had, it's hard to see how our input is going to influence the way the new district will be shaped, mostly because no one knows how it may look when it is complete. So how can we really give good constructive input when we can't collectively visualize what the outcome might be? All I can really visualize now is that anyone that wants to build a building has to make it at least 2 stories, and that the setback and distance between buildings would be lessened from the current code. This makes me visualize tall buildings close to each other which worries me. I hope that the entire scope of the project can be better put into focus for the public, so we can in turn give you better and more constructive input. Although it is hard to see how all the people's concerns will be addressed and factored into the planning, they will all, one way or another, be part of the new district. There will be, in the relatively near future, a rail trail that will require access points and space for parking for the many people that will use it. There will be a large increase in people walking and riding bikes who will need a safe place to do so. There will be an increase in traffic and a large increase in the need for parking. So what's important is how these and many other things are planned for. And most importantly, what is taken into consideration when planning. The immediate concern I would like to bring to the council's attention is the residential lots on Mead Avenue. The current proposal makes them commercial lots. I speak for most, if not all, of the 50 homeowners, some which have lived there over 50 years, that we don't want the zoning changed. If the council really values our input and wants it to help shape the new district, leaving the lots would be a tangible action that should be taken at this early stage of the planning process. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in the public? Tell us who you are and where you live.
Pam Weatherby, Mead Avenue.
Thank you.
I also was at the at Trax yesterday, and thank you, Brennan Paloma, and also other council members who have walked the Fishkill Avenue district. I appreciate your time and concern of that area. It was a productive meeting, and I agree with Thomas and with Stu, both the bike lanes and also just living in that area, the concern that our 50 households are about the residential parcels being pulled into this commercial zone that are located on Mead Avenue, that front Mead Avenue. Those had been residential at one time, unfortunately with fires. They are no longer, but that doesn't mean just because you put a paved lot on it that you can pull it into residential, and we really want you to strongly look at that. I know the map that's out there right now has that in there, which is concerning me, knowing that it will be until November that we'll see anything more. You know, with our discussions yesterday, it made us realize that people need to be participating, because if you get a public hearing notice, it's too late. The decisions have been made, not a full vote, but a lot of work was put into those documents that were prepared for a public hearing. So if you are at all concerned about the Fishkill Avenue district, people need to speak up now. And with that, everybody go to Fishkill Avenue, look at the mountain this week during sunset, anytime during the day. It is beautiful fall foliage, and let's try to keep that view there forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, there'll be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting. Ben, anyone online want to speak?
If you're on Zoom and you'd like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand option at the bottom of your screen. If you're joining us by phone, you'll need to press *9. And if you are joining us on YouTube, you'll need to join us on the actual Zoom feed by visiting beaconny.gov. And right now we do have one hand raised, and I will allow him to speak now. That's Brian.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my comment. I am Brian Mandel. I live on Wilk Street. And I wanted to thank the full council and everybody else who's participated in the discussions about the zoning discussion about Fishkill Avenue. I just wanted to say that I'm really excited by the potential changes that could be coming to that area. I think this is a fantastic opportunity for the city. And this area really has the potential to be new and modern and unrecognizable in the very near future. But I do want to make sure that the city is carefully thinking through these changes and the zoning and the development changes that can come with it. First of all, I think it is vital that the streetscape be totally rethought in order to incorporate modern pedestrian and bike infrastructure. Anyone who's driven there or walked over there knows that it is not a friendly place currently for pedestrians or bicycles. I think the streetscape also needs to be thought through to reduce vehicle speed, eliminate parking minimums, which would allow for a more livable and walkable community. I also think this is an opportunity for the city to implement new ideas that have been discussed in regards to housing. I'd encourage the city to consider proposals that aggressively mandate integrated workforce and low-income housing in this area. If this all is done right, this new development area in Fishkill could be a modern example of city planning and create a vibrant new neighborhood in the city, and could be a blueprint for future development in Beacon and the region as well. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And anyone else?
No further hands raised on Zoom.
Okay. So we got a couple of public hearings. Let's see if we can get ourselves through those. The first one is a public hearing for a proposed local law that would do some zoning code corrections. Just can I get a motion a second to open the public hearing, and then I'll have the city attorney describe it. Motion.
Second.
And all in favor of opening public hearing?
Aye.
And that was Dan and Molly. Nick, will you kind of give us a summary so that the public is aware what the basics are in here?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. So in the council's packet is the proposed local law 5 of 2023, the proposed environmental assessment form, the narrative for the environmental assessment form, as well as comments from the county planning board and city planning board. This local law is really technical in nature. It's not changing the uses, dimensions, or zoning designations, and it's not causing new impacts to lands or sensitive areas from the proposed regulation. Through more of an administrative cleanup. The primary edits are to remove the parking overlay district from the zoning map, to amend the zoning map to no longer make reference to that parking overlay district, make a correction to the dimensional regulations of building height, and to replace into the city code the illustration of design standards that were initially established and then were inadvertently omitted, and then to make one or two, if you will, corrections to typographical errors. The matter was referred to the county planning board as required by New York State law, who reviewed and responded back that this was a matter of local concern and they had no comments. The matter was also referred to the city planning board that reviewed it at its meeting in October, produced a memorandum dated October 19th, and made one recommendation that there be a clarification with respect to the correction to the dimensional regulations to clarify that the one-story secondary sections that to be set back at least 50 feet need to be attached, which was part of the original intent. So the local law that you have in front of you tonight does have that recommendation incorporated from the planning board in their report and recommendation. And with that, Mayor, I'm happy to answer any questions, and the matter is ready for the public hearing tonight.
Okay, any questions or comments from the council that might help to clarify what we're talking before we open it up? Okay, so let's open up any public comments. I've got a couple of folks that have signed up. Daniel Aubrey, if you're still here.
He left.
I don't see you. Teresa Kraft.
Those kids should have stayed here for a good lesson. But that was fun. I'd like to think the city's rushed the gun to do transition zones. These new zones are having direct impacts on our historic district overlays and residential neighborhoods. I think the language is still unclear for the building height standards. What's a 3-story building called after they installed all the rooftop structures that visually create a visible 4th floor that extends into view? Saying okay with a 15-foot plus setback, but viewed from what angle? We say viewed from the street. Most buildings are viewed from 4 sides. I don't believe we should be taking out the parking overlay districts. People say there's no problem with parking, but many are not here 7 days a week, 24/7. There are real parking issues, double parking issues, truck delivery issues. We are still missing signages on a lot of these crosswalks. And there's, I just think it's a false sense of security if we don't have the proper signage on Main Street. And I saw some transits out there today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on this first public hearing? Ben, you got anyone online?
Not online.
I have a check mark for Dennis Pavlock if he's still around, but I don't see him. Okay, and I think he probably didn't intend it. All right, so I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing on zoning code corrections.
That's Molly.
Second.
And Dan. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Then the other public hearing is regarding our community block development grant, which apparently is accelerated. A little surprised by the speed of it, but I need a motion and a second to open the public hearing, and then Chris will tell us about it.
Motion.
Molly
Second.
and Paloma. Everyone in favor of opening the public hearing on this, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, Chris, will you tell us a little bit and inform the public what we got?
Sure. So CDBG is Community Development Block Grant funding. It's funding that's routed from the federal government to Dutchess County, and they have accelerated the application period. Last year, we did this later in the year. We, at the last minute, found out that they had opened the grant round for 2024, and we quickly put an application in on Friday just to reserve the money that we would get. Each year, we have to do a hearing, but because they've accelerated this so much, we really had no time to do this in advance. So we're playing a little bit of catch-up. Now that we know their accelerated schedule, we'll be aiming to start this earlier in the year next year. So we are proposing to do 660 feet of sidewalk replacement on the south side of West Center Street. So between the sidewalk we just did on South Avenue last year and the Recreation Center. And again, any ideas that come up from this year, we'll start working on in the spring, because we have to have the engineering done, at least to have estimates for what these projects cost. So we need to do a public hearing tonight, and you'll also see that there's a resolution on the agenda. And I'm sorry it's so last minute, but they did not notify the city when they opened this.
How much is it?
We don't know yet. Typically, we get 15% of the allocation, and that's been, in the last couple of years, about $180,000. So we could probably expect around $180,000 again.
Hypothetically speaking, could these funds be used next year in time with repaving Fishkill Avenue to put in bike lanes?
No.
Why not?
Because we actually had to put the engineering concept plans in on Friday. So we could either not get our allocation this year.
Next year.
Yeah, you can't roll it over. That's why they're accelerating the application process, because HUD, which is the federal agency that grants this money, is giving them a very difficult time about not delivering on the money. Now, I don't know that this money is even going to be there, because, as you know, we don't have a functioning federal government at the moment. So this is all precipitated on somebody actually figuring out who's in charge of the House and passing spending bills.
But Ren, I think your question is, if it's not this year, could we work on something for next year?
Because it's a yearly thing. Yeah.
I think there is a desire to focus it in areas of census tract lower income, is that right?
You have to focus it in those low-income census tracts.
Okay.
Which I think that Fishkill rezoning area
It does,
is.
but again, we have a big project going out for Fishkill Teller Avenue, and we don't even know the scope of that right now. So you'll recall, we were going to redo everything on Fishkill Avenue, and again, we have to see we don't even know what the scope of that project is going to be until we get a final approval from DOT this fall. So to start,
Sorry, just so I'm understanding, you're talking about the section between Washington Avenue and Ron's that we're still working through, right?
We don't know what the project looks like right now.
Okay.
So again, if we're going to say Fishkill Avenue is way out in the future, we spent Thursday and Friday running around trying to get this money locked down so we didn't lose it. So we went with something that I already had started the engineering on. Again, Fishkill Avenue, like we got to figure out what the DOT project does, and then we have to figure out what the sewer and water improvements do. It would be impossible to put something in right now when we've been all over the place with the zoning just in the last few weeks. So what are we designing there? But we could do it next year, but this is just trying to get our allocation for 2024 before we lost it.
Yeah, I was not talking
This is a
about
public
last-
hearing.
For the purpose of the public hearing, Chris,
Thank you.
and just to say this explicitly, the reason why we have to have it tonight, and it was noticed so shortly, and we cannot wait till November 13th, is that's because it be after the window to submit an application. Is that
Yes.
accurate?
Yes, we actually missed the deadline for the letter of interest, but they waived that.
Okay, so this
they
is a
said
way for us to...
Again, they sent notices to somebody from an old email when they know we've been working with them the last 3 years. So I don't know what happened on the Dutchess end, but I know we didn't get any notification. And then when we
I was
were...
going to forward it to you because I get these, but I just didn't.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'm on the list now.
Yeah.
I mean, we just submitted the grant work for 2023 to be reimbursed. You would have thought they would have said, hey, here's the 2024.
Their lists are weird. There's so many check boxes, and you don't know which list you're on.
Yeah.
So let me suggest we move to seeing if the public wants to make any comments on this, noting now that it is last minute that we are applying due to, sort of lack of notice, and that we're just trying to meet a deadline. Does anyone want to speak on this topic? I have one check mark for Teresa Kraft.
I don't want to hog the mic. I'm in support of the application, and I'm glad you found it for the 2024 Community Development Grant. But I'd also like to suggest that you also put a link onto the regular agenda to get these documents. Some people might not have looked into the bottom of the agenda to find the link is in the resolution section. I know I see this like almost every agenda, and I'll go, how come that's not attached? But when I go down further, it's there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to make any comments on this one? And again, we're required by law to hold a public hearing. I don't think many people want us to turn down money and skip a cycle. But again, we're required to have the public hearing. Ben, anyone want to make a comment on this in the remote arena?
None online.
Okay. Can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing for the Community
Molly.
Development Block Grant.
And can I get a second?
Point of information, if we close it, when can the council continue their discussion, our discussion? Because this is the first night that we're seeing it, and I have a couple things to say.
Yeah, that would be items 7.
Okay, when we get to voting.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
No
Second.
worries. Yeah. No, because this is just closing the public
Yep,
hearing,
I know.
right?
Just want to be sure.
Absolutely, no issue. So all in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Great. Okay, let's do reports. Which direction do we want to start? Why don't we start with Dan tonight, okay?
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say, it's been a couple weeks since City Council has had a discussion about the Fishkill Avenue rezoning, and I've had a couple weeks to digest it and talk to a lot of folks out there, and I'm of the opinion now that we should proceed with a building moratorium in the area that's been designated as the Fishkill Creek zone, or the Fishkill Avenue zone, and that we should continue in a process that is similar as possible to the comprehensive plan, in a very public process, and continue the law that we've been working on. And that's what I hope that we'll have that discussion in a couple of weeks when we have our next workshop. I don't have any other reports tonight. Thanks.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks to the 24 people who came to an open public meeting about the Route 52 rezoning. It was proof of concept that these types of informal meetings are highly attractive to people in our city. And there was a lot of interest around a few things that I'd like to pass along the information to the council and ask that we seriously consider acting on first, including bike lanes as part of the current repaving plan for Route 52. 2, a temporary building moratorium on Route 52 area, the area being considered for rezoning. And these are, ideas that came out in the meeting of 20-plus people who were pretty much in concert with these ideas. 3, a planning process that includes a comprehensive plan-like process where a variety of planning experts are engaged. And 4, a planning process where a variety of renderings and concept designs can be presented for public feedback. So another overarching theme, and this comes up time and again, I've heard this idea from people who are presently in the audience, is the call for a dedicated communications staff member who can help focus on public engagement. Thanks again, that's it for me.
Thank you, Ren. I think that was an excellent summary of the conversation. I'll just add my thanks to everybody who came out and shared their thoughts and opinions with us. I do appreciate those times where we can have more of a conversation with the public about our concerns. And I will also note, because we won't be meeting until partway through November, that next month is National Native American Heritage Month. I'm going to be hosting, along with Story Screen and The Yard, a screening on Sunday, November 12th of a documentary called The Dakota Nation versus the United States. It came out this year. It's an award-winning documentary, and it talks about, among other things, the 300-plus treaties that have been signed between tribal nations and the United States government, of which all have been broken by the United States government, and looking at the ramifications for contemporary Indigenous people because of that inconsistency. I will also remind folks that Beacon's West End Story continues as a project between I Am Beacon and the Howland Library and the Beacon Historical Society. There are exhibits up at the Howland Public Library and the Beacon Historical Society through the next few months, and there's also a panel discussion at Springfield Baptist Church on Tuesday, November 14th at 7 p.m. And that's it for me.
Good evening. Not much to report, but I just want to thank all those who have been involved in the recent repaving of many streets going on in Beacon currently. I think the process, I happen to oversee it immediately because it was one of the streets is in front of my house. But it's highly efficient and being a very little inconvenience to the property owners. And it takes a lot of effort to put all that together. So I'd just like to thank all the crews that have been involved and those that have been organizing that. And maybe Chris could give us an update on when the actual paving would happen, when you have a chance. But thanks to the Highway Department and everybody that made this so easy for everybody. Thanks.
Great. I also wanted to remark on the milling part of the milling and paving project. I also had some around my house, and it was great to see it done so efficiently. And as we're not meeting until later, because as Halloween is next week, and I happen to live in one of the popular neighborhoods to trick-or-treat in Beacon, I think there are several of them. Just a reminder to stay safe on the streets out there if you have friends who are coming to join you, because Beacon is such a great walkable city. That's a great place for families to walk around and trick-or-treat. Just to keep in mind kind of the neighbors and the other traffic that's where, and be safe. And in my part of Beacon, I want to appreciate that the city was able to work to get, I think one street closed for this year. I think the neighbors are really excited to see if that could be expanded in the future, sort of a pilot for this year. And so I really appreciate the neighbors who are working to try to make these events as safe and enjoyable for everyone as possible. And I'll pass it to you, Lee.
I'll be brief. I appreciate all the comments, so I won't, duplicate them. I was away for the week. Thank you, George, for making sure the city was in good hands. And so I missed a couple meetings, and I look forward to catching up. And that's all I got. Chris, anything?
I would just like to remind people that milling is being completed tomorrow on Walcott Avenue between South Avenue and Tyranda, and then we will begin repaving on Wednesday. There is going to be, the paving part is a little bit more disruptive because the pavement actually has to cool. So there is going to be disruption to neighborhoods like Iris Circle and the Beacon Housing Authority. We've already been out with leaflets. We'll be doing calls to alert people and posting those. But we hope to do the paving starting Wednesday and going through next Monday, the 30th, and then we'll be done. And then we'll come back and do the striping of crosswalks and long lines and the short lines. So thanks for your patience while that is occurring.
So, Chris, the milling on Walcott will go to Tyranda. It ends at Teller because they just have more work to do?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, they're going to finish that tomorrow.
Okay. Let's start up local laws and resolutions. So the first one is a resolution certifying base percentages and proportions for the 2023 assessment roll. Can I get a motion and a second before Nick tries to explain what all that means?
Motion.
That was Ren and Paloma. So Nick, what's going on here?
So in 4 words or less. So in the council's agenda packet is a memo from our office that explains the annual resolution adopted by the City Council adopting adjustments to the base proportions for the homestead and non-homestead taxes. We did discuss that at length at last week's work session, so I'll be brief here and refer residents to our memo and the backup documents that will explain it in more detail. But in essence, the City of Beacon, when it adopted to enact a full market value assessment system, also enacted several decades ago a provision to opt into what's called the homestead, where the tax rate for the commercial and residential, homestead being residential, non-homestead being the commercial, is different, and that percentage was set based upon a snapshot in time in 1988 and again in 2007. And so each year, the council evaluates what is the proportion between the total assessed value of residential and non-residential properties, and then adjusts that base proportion, which is then the formula that is used to allocate the city's taxes to the commercial and the non-commercial properties. New York State prepares the backup mathematics and formulas to arrive at the base proportions. It does that by looking at changes in the property values and by looking at transfers and other documentation. I know this is going to be discussed in more detail, I think, at November 6th work session when the assessor will come here and explain it in more detail. And so the City Council is being requested pursuant to New York State law, the real property tax law, to certify that the base proportions to be used for administration of the 2024 budget will be in accord with the figures as set forth on the forms that the council has before it. I hope that was brief enough and not too confusing.
Yeah, Nick, can you explain, is there a reason why we're voting on this tonight and not after we talk with Kathy on November 13th? Is there some reason why we cannot wait until the 13th?
Chris, I don't know if you've had discussions with Kathy that might inform that. I'm not aware of, it does need to be done. I don't know how it plays into when it needs to be sent to New York State and when it then needs to be sent to the county and the other departments and agencies so that the taxes and tax bills can then be generated. I don't have an answer for you as to the timing. I'd be guessing. I know we typically have done it at this time period, but whether there's an impact from delaying it on, I just don't know.
Last year, we did it earlier even. So there was some delay this year.
I asked
and
because...
it's not gonna change at all.
Right. I think I probably will, it won't change my vote, but I do think at our last workshop, we had a bunch of questions that we were told, understandably, that Kathy would need to answer them. So I think for the public's perspective, it seems a little weird to vote on something when we haven't discussed it. So if there's no reason why we cannot wait until the 13th.
I don't know that there's not a reason that it has to be done. There could be a deadline that we're not gonna make. We don't have another voting meeting now until November 13th. So I don't know what the deadline is. I wish this had been asked in advance. Again, I don't know this. This is our assessor. This is a perfunctory thing that we do every year. we can
I
have
would
that
concur.
conversation, but this, like, we're literally we have to certify these base proportions for our budget. We shouldn't have even put the budget, like last year, we didn't put the budget forward till we already had done these base proportions. So again, I don't know what the risks are, Molly. If you want to take that risk, it's up to the council. But these are basic governance things, and I can't even believe we're having a debate about it.
So let me suggest, so we all agree there's nothing on these 2 pages that we can affect, right? Having said that, are there any questions about anything on these 2 pages?
Yes.
Let's see if we can answer them.
Well, I would like to know how they're calculated relative to, it sounds like it goes back to 1991, and how it affects and how it goes from there, and how it actually is related to what we have in reality in Beacon. Which I was told last workshop, those would be questions more pertinent for Kathy to get into.
Well, she can certainly start, but let me give you some high level without all of the details. So the purpose of the law, when it was enacted, was to protect the homestead class, meaning homeowners. And homesteads are defined as 1, 2, and 3 family homes. All other lots that are not 1, 2, or 3 family homes are in the non-homestead class. When this was enacted, what happened was the city needed to do a full value update, which the city did. What then was looked at was what was the difference between what share was the homestead portion paying originally versus what portion should they be paying as a result of the assessment update. And broad strokes, what was happening, and is happening again today, and it happens pretty consistently, is that homes appreciate at a faster rate than commercial properties. And that's because homes are based on sale prices. Sale prices have gone up. You can know why they're up now, which is there's a shortage of housing, and as a result, prices are being bid up. The other thing you can know now is that on the commercial side, there's an excess of commercial property. I mean, you look at New York City and all the commercial space, and as a result, commercial rents are not rising at the same rate, and therefore, commercial assessments are not rising. That's what was happening when this law was passed. And so the rate, what should have been the share that the homes took on, was more like 80%, and instead they only took on 70% of the taxes. That was the purpose of the law. The law keeps the residential share at that rough 70% level, but two things need to be taken into account each year when assessments are updated. The first one is any additions to the tax rolls or any deletions from the tax rolls, and they have to look at that by the residential class and then at the commercial class or the non-homestead class. So that is part of the calculation that you see on the page. The other part of the calculation is looking at what were the original shares, the original base proportions, what the increase in appreciation has been of the 2 classes, not counting the additions or deletions to the tax roll. So additions are like our new buildings coming on, but there are always some deletions for a building coming offline or getting torn down. And this year, again, the homestead side rose much more so than the commercial side, understandably, if you're looking at the market, because homes are in short supply, people are demanding them, and prices are up. Commercial property is not in that situation at all. And what the last step, which I'm not as sure about exactly how the calculation works, is that there's an adjustment to reflect that appreciation, and there's a range in which the shares can move, but they stick around that 70% number. I don't know if it's 71 or 2 or 3. I haven't looked at the numbers, but they stay around that number, and they flop a little bit depending on how much the appreciation has been on the homestead side versus the non-homestead side. So that's sort of how it works. If we wanted the details, I'm not sure Kathy could give you much more, to be honest. I know it because, I had a role at the agency that oversees the property tax, and I was actually attempting to alter this particular statute in a few ways. But that's sort of the basics. I don't know if it helps, because I don't know if that's like clarifies anything, but I'm just trying to tell you what I know, okay?
And Mayor, if I can add to that, the base proportions are used for the city budget that you're scheduling a public hearing for, which is being introduced for the mayor's budget. So if the numbers were not certified tonight, then you would be considering delaying that process, because the budget takes the total budget and then allocates it. So when you're voting on the budget, you're also voting on an informed discussion about how that impacts the residents. And so the residents need to know what that tax rate is. And again, this is information supplied from the state. So I think there are two questions I understand. One is the informational process, which will be addressed on the 6th. But I think the information you have before you tonight is sufficient to allow the council to consider the resolution at tonight's meeting.
Okay. Are there other questions? Because I might be able to answer some of them.
I'll save my questions for Kathy.
Yeah. But again, a lot of it has to do with what are the two classes doing in terms of appreciation? And, the commercial side's pretty flat right now. And I think that has a lot to do with it. The apartment side is rising, and I think Kathy will explain that apartment assessments are changing, even if the ones that involve commercial space may not be changing very much right now, right? Because those are different classes, and I know they have to look at the different classes that way, so.
And apartments count as non-homestead if it's more than 3 units?
If it's more than 3 units. So if it's a 4-family, it's in the non-homestead class. And the tax rate in the non-homestead class is roughly 50% higher.
Right, yeah, because that was one of my questions for Kathy. Next week is when we have our large projects like Edgewater and even Mirabeau coming online, which is a large commercial project or hopes to be in the future. Like, could that mean that actually we do have a higher an actual higher percentage of commercial, which might not be the case. I might be thinking about it in a not holistic way, but
no, I think that's right. At a high level, suppose I'll give you some rough numbers to think through, and I don't know if it helps or not, so I'm sorry. But the share of the taxes are 70 for homestead and 30 for non-homestead, rough numbers. The share of the assessment roll is more like 80 or even more percent is the homestead side, right? So if homes are worth 80% of the tax base but are only getting 70% of the tax, you know their rate's lower, and you know the rate for the other side is higher, right? If the commercial side doubled in size, right, it would take on a bigger share and the homestead side would drop, right? So that's the one direction it could head. But it would depend on whether the new things coming online are commercial. That would be like apartments, 240 units would come online, that would be commercial, or condo. Right, so the view came on as condo. Those are viewed as individual homes generally. Condos are particularly difficult. One of the changes we wanted to make was how they were assessed, but that's generally how to think about it. It is complicated. I'm hoping Kathy can give you a little bit more, but again, I tend to know this area pretty well, so I hope that answers some of the
Just to clarify, that was good, but just to clarify, the condos are homestead. That's what's different.
Yeah, they're viewed as an individual unit, right, with a separate deed, and that would be if I had the person from ORPS here, he would correct me and say, in these circumstances they are viewed as homestead, and then in these circumstances they are viewed as non, and I don't know which that is, but I think generally it's a homestead. Okay.
That was helpful, Lee.
Yeah.
Thank you. I think particularly because, as we know, we've gotten lots of questions from people, and so I feel like it's an opportunity just to slow down as much as we can to make sure people don't feel like we're glossing over or rushing through things that we don't need to be.
Yeah, and I'd like us to have that discussion again with the assessor here, and again, hear how she talks her way through them. But that's how to think about it, is that the different groups change their value in different ways. And again, homes are rising quickly. Since rents are rising, that means apartments are rising, and they're rising, if they're more than 4 units and they're rising, then they're going to increase in value. And commercial tends to be slower, and as a result, you're seeing shifts. And I'll give you another one that relates to those questions. If someone raises the rents, does that mean the assessor knows that? And the general answer is no, right? The assessor doesn't know unless the property owner submits the rents. And so what you use for assessments is the market rents, right? one-bedrooms in Beacon, based on survey, are renting at, and they're X% higher than they were last year. That's what they have to do, and they have to do that for commercial rents as well. So you say someone buys a property that's commercial, spends a lot of money on it, oh, well, that's the sale price. Isn't that the assessment? Not necessarily, right? They're going to look at comparable sales, and they'll say in the commercial class, on average, it only rose 6%. This person paid too much, apparently. I'm only going to raise it 6%. Or that's sales. Or if rents rose 5%, they're going to look at that, right? And so it's pretty reasonable in terms of the approach. And the assessor is required to do all those reviews, and there's the state agencies checking behind them, okay? Because, and not because they don't trust assessors, it's because assessors occur at the local government level, don't necessarily have the skill sets, and certainly don't have the statistical capacity to do what can be done centrally at the state. So the state provides a lot of support to help them through it. And in this particular case, the numbers that were submitted went through 2 rounds of changes on this piece of paper, because even with instructions, you don't always get it right. So I'm not surprised we might have gotten it wrong twice in the process, but it is what it is. So I hope that helps. And again, we should definitely keep asking these same questions, and see if I missed any, ask them of Kathy, because I want her to be able to explain. She may do a better job than I do. Okay? All right. Are we okay with this one? Can we go ahead? Yeah. All right. Any further questions or anything? Okay. So all in favor of adopting the percentages and proportions for the 23 assessment rolls, say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you. And again, when's the date that Kathy's coming? Is it the next
6th.
meeting? Is
Yeah.
that the next workshop?
Well, we don't have a meeting next week, so it's the week after,
But it's that next workshop?
the workshop.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And could you give her a little bit of feedback as to what
She,
we were hearing?
she's been asked to watch the video at which questions were asked.
Okay.
Well,
Right, great, thank you.
and also, some members of the council emailed questions, so she has all of that.
That's really good. Because again, it's a really tough area, and I think we should ask as many questions as possible, because it's an area where you can't educate the public enough, right? It's just a hard area. Okay, thank you. So the next resolution is to set a public hearing. The public hearing is a local law concerning stop signs. Can I get a motion and a second to set the public hearing?
Motion?
That's
Second.
Dan and Ren. And Ben, will you tell us about it and then let us agree on what the date is?
Yes. So last week at the workshop, we discussed 2 potential amendments to our parking and signage code. We're actually only bringing one to you tonight to set a public hearing for the matter on Cliff Street that Justice had raised some concerns about. We are doing some internal follow-up on to get answers to all those questions. We'll bring that back to you at a later date. Moving forward with the stop signs for now, and I'll share my screen here for a moment. You can see exactly what we're talking about. Just as a reminder, this is adding 2 new stop signs. There's already an existing stop sign at this intersection, and the reason there won't be a 4th is because Spring Street is one way going away from the intersection, so there's no need for it. But essentially, this is what we would be looking at should you end up ultimately passing this. All we're asking at this point is to consider whether you'd like to set a public hearing.
And is there a date for the public hearing, the resolution?
Yes, there is. I believe it's the 13th.
The 13th.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. Any discussion of this by council?
I just appreciate you, Ben, looking further into the Cliff Street questions that Justice raised. So.
Yeah, they'll come up at another resolution. Okay. All right, so all in favor of setting the public hearing for November 13th for this local law concerning stop signs, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. So the next one is also setting a public hearing. This is for a local law regarding internal property subdivisions. Can I get a motion and a second? And Nick will elucidate us.
Motion.
Second.
So Molly and George, we're looking for illumination, Nick.
Okay, I'll shed some light on the topic then.
There you go.
So this is the schedule of public hearing for November 27th. This is a zoning local law, so it will be referred to the County Planning Board and the City Planning Board for report and recommendation, and heard at the City Planning Board's November meeting. This is a request as set forth in the backup supporting materials to refine and expand the application of an existing code provision that applies to non-residential projects to also apply to residential projects and mixed-use projects. There's a provision in the zoning ordinance that allows for multiple building projects, once they obtain and receive site plan approval that is in conformance with the zoning ordinance, to then do what are called internal subdivisions. Basically, that's typically used for financing purposes. When you have multiple buildings, you would build in phases, and the banks would have a construction loan or permanent financing against one of the buildings. And so what the proposed amendment would do would be to expand that option to residential projects as well. And in this case, it will continue to be, under the proposed local law, those internal lot subdivisions would be reviewed by the planning board. There would be a public hearing, it would be a public process. Staff and the board members would be involved. And the law requires that all of the conditions and the underlying zoning still be maintained, and so that the internal lot line adjustments or the internal subdivisions do not impact the overall project, but just allow for those lots to be internally subdivided. And so again, you'd be setting a public hearing for November 27th and referring this zoning amendment local law to the county and city planning boards.
How did this come about exactly? Because in our last meeting, we had a memo, we had a presentation from the city attorney with a memorandum from a developer's attorney.
Yes. So this is at the request of a property owner. That letter is contained in the packet. It was included in the last work session. I explained it because it was something we discussed at the staff level and discussed with the applicant. And as it's a modification to the city code, I thought it was simpler for me to explain it and describe it, as we're familiar with the code, or it would be a quicker explanation for the city. But yes, it is as detailed in the materials at the request of a property owner.
Second law recently proposed by a builder.
Okay. Any other comments?
I think my main concern, I'm sorry, we're just setting a public hearing. I will
Correct.
save this for later.
Great. All right, so this would be a public hearing on the 27th.
Oh, sorry, one more question, Nick. Maybe you said this. You said it would go towards our planning board. Is it also going to the county? Sorry if you already said that, I just missed it.
That is correct. The county and the city planning board will be requested to provide a report and recommendation.
Great, thank you.
And you will receive those before the public hearing on November 27th.
Just why we're setting it, yeah, for roughly a month from now and not for the 13th. Thank you.
Correct.
All right, so all in favor of setting public hearing for this for November 27th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. Next one is also setting a public hearing. This one is for the proposed 2024 budget. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Dan and George. Chris, is this for the 27th, or is this what day?
No, this is for the 13th.
For the 13th. Anything you want to add other than the date?
Not really.
Will we be through most of our workshop meetings on the budget by then, or we're just collecting the hearing and then we'll finish?
You're going to have 2 rounds of department heads coming in on the 6th and on the 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know what we did last year is we opened it but kept it open. I think we
Correct.
have that
Yep.
option because we
Yeah,
don't
sure.
have to vote till later, or we have the option of not voting until
Yes.
later. So.
Cool. Any other comments? All right, all in favor of setting the public hearing for the proposed budget on the 13th of November, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great, thank you. Next one is a local law concerning zoning code corrections, for which we just had a public hearing. Can I get a motion and a second to adopt that?
Motion.
Second.
Molly and George. And Nick, is there anything that you want to add that you didn't describe earlier in the public hearing on this?
I would, Mayor, thank you. There was a comment about the proposed the existing parking overlay district. I would note, and this is in a comment that John Clark has made and is also in his memo, which is in the packet, that the parking overlay district it exists on the zoning map, but it's never been mapped and it's not a purpose or cross-reference in the code. And so really it was deemed by John to be superfluous. So that's why it's being proposed to be removed, because it doesn't serve a present purpose.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion on this?
There's also a comment about clarifying the height minimums and maximums. I don't know, Nick, if you can address that question as well, about the building height?
Yep, we'll just get that provision.
I believe it was referring to section 6.
Section 6, yep, E6, 241B6. Yeah, I don't recall the specific question, but this is language that I believe the building inspector and Don Clark had discussed and being discussed with the planning board to provide clarification. And then this is one where the planning board had added a recommendation to make clear that the one-story secondary sections has to be attached and not detached.
I think the question was the minimum 2 stories, maximum 3 stories, and 38 feet, that it can be 3 stories but can't be above 38 feet. And that's, they both have to be true. Is anyone else following the question?
To be true. Well, it's not clear to me what the question is.
It was referring to a building that I understand to be in this district that was 3 stories, but also had, because of the gabled roof, is the impression of being more than 3 stories.
Okay, well, that section is not being changed. There's existing language that says minimum 2 stories, maximum 3 stories, and the 38 feet as determined from the average street front level. So I don't know about the specific building that's being discussed. It's not impacted by this zoning. If it's something that the council wishes to have us look into and discuss with the building inspector, it would be the subject of a different local law. So I can't answer a question about a hypothetical or about a specific building, because that is determined by the building inspector as to how height is measured, and that provision is not being changed in the code. So if there's a request for a clarification of that language, that would require a separate local law.
Yeah, I'm just looking at those words. They seem pretty clear that, you can do one, if you have to do minimum 2 stories, that means you can do 2 or 3, and that your building can't be more than 38 feet in height, and it has to be both of those. Right, you can't do 3 stories that's 40 feet. You can't do 2 stories that's 50 feet. You got to do 2 or 3 and stay under 38, at 38 feet or less.
But I think in a 38-foot building with a gable roof, it's not to the ridge, it's to a medium, I believe.
Yeah, and that's another sentence further in that section, right? Because it talks about that as well.
But that's not what we're talking about now.
No, and those are words that are up to the building department to interpret, but they seem pretty clear.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions on this? Okay. All in favor of adopting Local Law 5 concerning the zoning code corrections, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, great, thank you. The next one is a resolution authorizing an application for Partners for Climate Action Hudson Valley Building Decarbonization Grant Funding. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
So George and Molly, and Chris, you're going to tell us what all those words one after the other mean.
Yes, but I'm not saying it
Hudson Valley
again.
Building Decarbonization Grant Funding.
So it's a green grant for $100,000 from the New World Foundation. It's a private grantee, and in order to apply for it, you have to have a resolution from the municipal board. You'll see that with the next 2 resolutions as well. So this would go towards the geothermal heating and cooling system at the firehouse. We've already committed to do that, and it would basically just help us pay down the cost of that.
Do you know what percentage of the cost this grant would cover? Or that's
Yeah, roughly like 20 to 25. I think our contract for the geothermal system is in the range of 425, 430. So this would be just over 20%.
Okay, questions, comments? And it's only for that one project?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you clarify that this grant was not originally included in the budget, so is it overall savings?
Yes, it wasn't included in the budget. We didn't know about the grant. It was recently announced, and our Climate Smart coordinator is working to put the grant in.
Do we know yet when we'd find out if we were awarded the grant?
No.
And I gather this would reduce the capital expense?
Slightly. I mean, I know
Yeah.
it's a huge project, so this sounds like a lot of money, but it's again another drop in the bucket.
But all the drops help.
Yeah, they do. We're still going for the drops.
Yeah. It's under 1% of the total budget for that one. Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or questions on this one? All right, so all in favor on authorizing an application for this particular grant funding, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Great, thank you. Next one is also authorizing an application, but this one is for the 2024 Community Development Block Grants. Can I get a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Molly and Dan. And Chris, you've told us about this already. We're talking about, you think it's 160 to 180? That's kind of the range?
They haven't confirmed what it would be.
All right, but in the past, it's somewhere in there.
It's been about 182 to 185 in the last 3 years.
All right. And
we are rolling over. We had a little bit of money left from the project we just did on South Avenue, and we asked them if we could roll that over. So we have about 5,000 additionally.
Yeah, I saw that. Okay. And we will get in under the deadline, and we have done our public hearing.
We did get in under the deadline on Friday. We will now send them the past resolution. We just uploaded the draft.
Okay.
And so wink and nod, they are letting us do that.
Okay.
It'll no doubt pass. I just wanted to raise one question, and that was about this idea of ideas from this year being used next year. The idea that Ren and I raised last year, which is not included in this year, was Grove Street. So when I'm thinking about sidewalks, I'm usually thinking about corridors to school. I think West Center Street, I have no objections to that. Obviously, it's a neighborhood that needs good sidewalks leading to the rec center, et cetera. But I was just wondering what happened to the Grove Street idea, because there's this rise on Grove Street for the families walking towards Forrestal and some of the parochial schools over there. And there's no sight lines from above or below that rise. This is the area right next to where the subdivision is happening on Highland. So anyway, I was just wondering if maybe we can rekindle that idea at some point, because I was kind of hoping that would be up for this year's discussion.
I don't know if it's in the catchment area, so that would be the first thing. We'd have to make sure it's in the mapped area.
We looked it up last year.
I also don't think it's wise to be building new sidewalks when we have so many failing existing sidewalks. We literally could put tens of millions of dollars into the sidewalk system that you have today. It doesn't meet ADA standards in a lot of areas. In fact, we're trying to go back and do areas that are completely not safe for even walking. So most agencies prioritize rebuilding the things that they have before they go build new ones.
Well, there's nothing there right now. The families have to walk in the road.
I'm just saying, Dan, you
It's safer to
have
be on a
miles
new
of sidewalk that are broken, cracked, disheveled, not ADA compliant, have things in the middle of them.
I'm not saying I don't want that addressed, but I think we should try to do a mix, and I think we should focus on school safety.
You can do that as a policy. There's no policy guideline to tell me to do Grove Street right now. Like, they've asked me for policy guidance on why we're doing this. In the comprehensive plan, you've talked about rebuilding sidewalks near parks and schools. So this one fit really nicely in it because it's between a park and a school. In terms of building Grove, I have no idea what that even would be, because you'd have to have, when you build a new sidewalk, you have to deal with drainage, you have to deal with right-of-way acquisition. I mean, we haven't even gotten through Fishkill Teller Avenue. Everybody thinks that's a done deal, and it's like, we're still queuing that up. I don't know where we're going to get money to do new sidewalks on Grove, honestly.
Right, again, I'm not saying no to West Center Street, I'm just reminding everyone that this was an idea that Ren and I raised, and I think there's a lot of families out there that think this is an important area, and I'll continue to press it. And I don't know when my entry point is to make this a policy priority. For 4 years, I've been asking for a conversation about what the most important sidewalks to do are, and we haven't had it.
But wouldn't you rebuild what you have before you invest in new?
No, I wouldn't. I would put it in places where there's families walking in the middle of the road.
All right, so.
It makes no sense, Dan. You have sidewalks all over the town right now that are there, and they're not in any kind of good repair. I mean, like, even DOT, I hate to say Department of Transportation is wise, but they prioritize rebuilding roads that they already have before they build new roads. I mean, like, the sidewalks that we have, if we don't fix the sidewalks we have, we get sued on that when people fall. You know, again, there's buses that take kids to school as well, and you know, you have a couple people that want a sidewalk there. Well, there's people all over the city that want sidewalks. We get calls all the time to fix sidewalks. If I have to prioritize them, it's rebuilding sidewalks, particularly in low-income areas. And that's what we've been doing.
So what I would suggest, because what I have heard is that the choices that we have proposed both fit for the grants that we can get and do fit the overall high-level prioritization of Main Street, access to Main Street, schools, and then lower-income areas. So I'm not hearing that there's objection to what we're choosing. What I would like to see is at some point maybe we have a conversation of can we slip an additional priority in. What I am concerned with myself is that just because some people say this is important doesn't mean that it's important for the entire city. And so being able to do that overall prioritization is of some relevance and importance. So let's see if we can have at least a discussion of what our overall priorities, but we've heard those. And I don't know how it translates exactly, but I too wouldn't mind, some direction on where we think we're heading. Honestly, my view is where Chris's is that we're doing the right ones, but I don't know where the next one would be. And it's hard for me to tell where does this fit, because I think you're saying the same thing. I'm hearing it, I don't know where it fits.
I'm experiencing it, I drive it,
Right, I've walked the area, I know there's a partial sidewalk for part of it, not all of it.
Yeah.
Right, so. But let's see if we can, not during budget season, not during the C whatever this is. I never get the letters like Community Development Block Grant.
Yeah, I was also thinking, we did priorities that I think worked well the start of the year. I appreciate not all of us will be on city council. We don't know how the voters will decide, but for those who are around, it could be part of the priorities, is this whole idea of a sidewalk policy or perhaps streets policy, and maybe that's something we take up to talk more about the overall approach to this, and maybe that will answer some of the questions of how individual councilors and members of the public bring up their needs in a way that actually is, we feel like we're kind of getting at least a line of sight into what is and isn't being done, so.
Okay. Yeah, and I know it's hard. You will see me be very cautious on how much we try to tackle, because I'm trying to see the big picture of financing. And I think it's one of the hardest areas. And, I think as we go through this, there are sidewalks to be done. And we just need to figure out how. And there's a pacing element to it. And again, I hear you on this.
500,000 is the pace we decided on in the capital plan. 500,000 a year.
Good. We are going to do more than $500,000 a sidewalk next year when we do Fishkill Teller Avenue. I don't know, we don't have the bandwidth every year to do 500,000. You can put that in there. We can't even design that much.
I'm responding to the mayor's comment about pacing.
Yep.
And I said our pacing was $500,000 a year.
But
it's not a criticism.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing more.
Well, so I will say that, if we get a budget where, we're spending $440,000 for a pension increase, I'm not going to be on a $500,000 thing.
But we also just need to be a little realistic here. You had a project on your book for 22 years for Fishkill Teller Avenue. That's finally getting going. And that was a Herculean task to do. So again, we can go and say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. we've got big projects going on that are completely taking up every bit of our bandwidth right now. I don't know how many times and how many ways we say that. We have no bandwidth to do sidewalks on Grove Street next year. If you don't want to do Fishkill Teller Avenue, then we can do stuff like that.
Yeah, I gather that the sidewalks on Fishkill Avenue that we do manage to do and Teller will far exceed the expenditure that we have targeted.
That's right.
But having said all that, it doesn't mean we don't want to kind of see what the picture is going forward. This is not the only area where we've got money that we need to expend over time. So we're just going to have to prioritize and balance, because I'm not going to propose tax increases, to fit a particular pattern in any given year. So, and I don't think we should. I don't think our taxpayers would want that. So.
But I appreciate your comment, Dan. I think, I hear it as a comment about process and just what the public understands and what the council understands about how funding becomes available and when. We had a very clear discussion about Grove Street as being considered for community development block grants funds this year. I think it snuck up on us last year. It snuck up on us again this year. And in both cases, there was another project that was prioritized, and you're not raising a point of order, for what it's been designated to. You're just giving everyone a heads up that it's good to have communication on these issues so that we can get some feedback and talk it through. That's what we're here for.
And again, it's very hard, especially for ward council members, because you're close to the public, you're hearing stuff, and it'd be great to get all the stuff done. I hear the same ones, and I'm looking at the big picture, and I've spent a lot of time working on the financial side to enable us to do as much as we can. So these are the trade-offs that we all have to do, which are good ones. And I agree with Dan's statement and Ren's about process. And I would like to figure out how to have that kind of broadly speaking, where are we going conversation at some point. It's just not going to be tonight, all right? So, is that all right?
Yeah, thank you.
Of course. Any other comments on this particular one? Okay. So, all in favor of authorizing an application under the wire for a 2024 Community Development Block Grant funding, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Thank you. All right, we got two more to go. One is also authorizing an application. This is for the Hudson Valley Greenway Grant funding. Can I get a motion and a second? Crystal, give us details.
Motion.
Second.
All right, so that's Molly and Ren. Chris, what's this one?
This is for the Beacon Greenway branding and Fishkill Creek Trail signage project, which was proposed by the Greenway Committee. It's a $26,000 scope of work, and the grant would cover half of that. So it's an application for $13,000.
So this isn't existing signage and
No,
enhancement, this is new?
This is creating interpretive signs, wayfinding signs, and trailhead signage, and branding it. So it's working with one of the consultants that's worked with the Fishkill Greenway Committee, Fishkill Creek Greenway.
And the remaining funds come from the general fund?
No, they actually would come from the rec fund.
Signs are expensive. $26,000 for about how many signs?
It's the development of the signs as well. So they're creating a logo and a brand, then they're going to do the interpretive signs and make panels out of that. I don't know a lot about it. Mark asked me to do this so that they could put an application in.
So there isn't currently a brand, for at least for our portion of the Greenway Trail?
I don't
potentially?
believe so.
Okay, great.
And we just opened a trailhead at Wolcott, where 2328 Creek Drive comes up to Wolcott Avenue. So we cleaned that trailhead up, and the idea is to have better signage from there to at least East Main Street.
Yeah, I did notice that. It looked enticing, so I
Yes.
think having signage would be great.
Okay. Any other discussion on this one? All right, so all in favor of authorizing an application for the Hudson River Valley Greenway grant funding, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. One more. So this one is, I'm looking for a motion and a second to appoint Brandon Quaranta to the position of police officer. Can I get a motion and a second before the chief jumps too far?
Motion.
Molly.
Second.
You're on, Chief.
Who's the first? Was
Second.
I think it was Ren and,
Sorry. Ren and Molly, are you two of you good? All right, so Ren and Molly. Chief, nice to see you again today. What's up?
Just here to reintroduce you to Brandon Quaranta. I know the council had a chance to meet Brandon 2 weeks ago and interview Brandon. We're here for the purpose of appointing him to the position of police officer, and thank you for your time this evening for this purpose. I appreciate that. I'll do a quick synopsis of his background so that the people listening can hear a little bit about Brandon. He's 29 years old, graduated Arlington High School, attended Dutchess Community College, and then went on to Thomas and Jefferson University in Philadelphia, where he graduated with a bachelor's degree in environmental science in 2018. Brandon's currently a corrections officer at Ulster Correctional Facility. He started with New York State Corrections in March of 2020. He's also held jobs as assistant baseball coach at Dutchess Community College. He's worked at Planet Fitness and Mike Ortega's Health and Fitness Center. He's been a roofer for Salem Roofing and an assistant vet tech at Wappingers Falls Animal Hospital. Brandon successfully completed a very thorough background check, including physical agility tests, polygraphs, psychological tests, medical, criminal history, canvas, a neighborhood canvas where he lives. We checked with past employers and many other things that go involved with that. He's currently being looked at by the Dutchess County Sheriff's Office and NTA Police. However, Brandon has a preference of wanting to come to the city of Beacon, and we're hoping that tonight he can be appointed and start on Monday, October
30th. Okay. Any questions for the council you want to ask in public of Brandon? Oh, you got to speak into the mic, though.
As I was saying, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you guys again for having me here tonight.
All right. So we had an opportunity in executive session to ask Brandon any questions. Are there any things you'd like to ask him in public or anything else before we vote?
Mayor, that's why we bring them in executive session, though. Like, we've had this conversation.
Okay. Anything else before we vote? So all in favor of appointing Brandon Quaranta to the position of police officer, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I guess you're in. Now I get to swear you in. Stay there. Oh.
Quick swearing in.
I'm going to meet you up there.
Congratulations.
All right. So come on, join me up here. And that's going to be you. So raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, what's your name? Brandon Quaranta. Do solemnly swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of New York. And that I will faithfully discharge the duties of police officer according to the best of my ability. All right, congratulations. All right, now you're All right.
Can we do a quick family photo?
Yeah. What's that? Yeah. Where do you want to see?
You're perfect right there. The chief has to come. The chief is hiding again now. All right.
Very good.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. You know, I don't know why we save these for last, because, we'd get a much bigger crowd coming if we moved the approval of the minutes of October 10th up to the front, but we haven't, and we're now to that point. Can I get a motion and a second to approve the minutes of October 10th?
Motion.
Second.
All right, I got a motion and a second, and now, of course, there's the question, are there any corrections, additions, deletions, I's to dot or T's to cross?
I did not have anything.
I'm waiting. Do you think we should put this to public commentary? But no, let's not. All right, all in favor of approving the minutes of October 10th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, barely passes, but passes. This is the second opportunity for public comment. If you have not spoken at the first and would like to speak in public, this would be an opportunity on any topic of your choice. And anyone out here like to come speak? Welcome. Let us know who you are and where you live and talk away. Speak into the mic so others will be able to hear you.
Sorry, I can't hear from the back. So.
Okay.
Anyway, thank you, and thank you, Mr. White, for really trying to keep us on budget with our stuff. And sometimes these hearings, we really don't have a comment to say, but so when there is a sidewalk that's already built, that's maintained by a private owner, and it's not kept, like we have, and I'm so happy for the new gentleman that just got appointed to policing. You have a bonfire, right? Beacon Bonfire Festival. How do we know who covers what? Like, I'm sorry, I'm going off topic, but.
Who covers what and what?
Like, is the police, if I want to have a festival, right, do I just come to you and have a festival?
Yeah, come talk to us and we'll let you know how to do it.
We
You
have
don't have to do
we
it
have
here.
a permit that people apply for.
I understand
Yeah,
that. It's like
and then we get
protesting,
insurance.
It's like with anything.
Yeah.
But so the Beacon Bonfire Festival, some places I don't even think are legally able to hold these festivals.
I don't know, that would be your public comment.
That is
and
my
that's
public
Yeah,
comment.
that's fine. Yeah, because ordinarily we're not talking back and forth on this one.
I understood.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay,
So I think there's one on this venue that's not even allowed. So I just feel city council keeps pushing it to the planning board. Planning board pushes it to the building inspector. And then it's like the lowest man on the totem pole.
Mhm.
So somebody has to take responsibility.
okay,
And I don't want to be calling it.
okay. Thank you very much. I'll take a look, see what's up on it. I'm happy to. Okay, anyone else want an opportunity for public comment? All right, so the last item is I'll look for a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel, to come out and do no further business and adjourn.
Motion to go into executive session, to discuss personnel, and do no further public business thereafter.
That's a motion. I need a second.
Second.
Second. So Molly and Paloma, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all very much. Good night.
And Nick, we'll see you online for executive session.